All right, diving in. Today, we're tackling something I think a lot of us can relate to, improving our English in, well, those kind of awkward, embarrassing everyday situations.
Yeah, those moments we all dread.
Exactly. And for this deep dive, we're turning to this English learning podcast episode. It's all about forgetting someone's name.
Oh, I remember that one. They made the point that it happens to everyone.
Right. Like no one's immune to those brain farts.
Not even in your own language, right?
So true. So in this episode, they set up this scenario, right? There are these two people, Nick and Anna, and they've met at a conference.
Okay.
And later on, Nick runs into Anna again. But
And just totally blanking on her name.
exactly. And, the episode uses this situation to introduce some useful phrases, like, in a bit of a hurry. That's a good one.
Yeah, like if you need to get going, but you don't want to sound too abrupt. I remember they gave an example, like, can you drive any faster? I'm in a bit of a hurry.
Yeah, it's way softer than just yelling, hurry up.
Exactly. It's polite but firm.
Right. Then there's contact details, which feels very businessy.
Yeah, professional setting for sure. Instead of saying, how can I reach you? You could say, could I get your contact details?
And it makes me think of business cards.
For sure. Or like connecting on LinkedIn.
Now, this next one, this is my personal favorite. Slip my mind. It's just like the perfect way to describe when you've completely forgotten something.
Yeah, they had that example. It's your birthday. Oh, no, it totally slipped my mind.
Yeah. But you could also use it for less, life or death situations, right?
Right, like I forgot to respond to your email. It just slipped my mind.
It's casual, but it also has that kind of like humorous feel, right?
Yeah, like it wasn't your fault. Your brain just decided to play a trick on you.
And speaking of memory slips, the podcast hosts, they actually shared their own stories about forgetting names. One of them even forgot their uncle's name at a family reunion.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. It was so funny.
But it also proves that forgetting names, it's not just a language learner problem, right?
Totally. It happens to everyone, native speakers too.
So the question is, what do you do when you're in that awkward situation? The podcast had some good advice. One tip was to ask for a business card.
That's a good one, especially in a professional setting.
Right. And seeing the person's name written down, that can sometimes jog your memory.
Plus, you get their contact information.
Win-win. And if asking for a business card isn't appropriate, they suggested asking for their email address.
Because most email addresses include the person's full name.
Exactly. Sneaky, but effective.
It's like a little memory hack disguised as polite conversation.
And what I found really interesting is how the podcast goes beyond just vocabulary. They talk about these fluency boosters, which are like little tweaks you can make to sound more natural.
Right, like that one example they gave using how's it going instead of how are you.
That's just a little more casual.
Yeah, and it feels more genuine, like you're actually interested in what's going on in their life.
Yeah, like you're inviting them to share a little bit of their world with you.
Right. It's not just a formality.
Exactly. But what really stood out to me were these two phrases, around here and terrible with. They're so common, but mastering them can really make a difference.
Okay, so let's break those down. Around here, it's like when you're asking about locations near you. The example they gave was, is there a bank around here?
Yeah. But they also pointed out the difference between around here and around the corner, which is specifically the next street over.
It's a small distinction, but it's important.
Yeah, you don't want to send someone on a wild goose chase.
And then they talked about using around there for a more general area, like, I used to live around there.
So many variations, right? It's all about the context.
Now, terrible with, this one's a gem. It's perfect for expressing difficulty with something, but in a lighthearted way.
Yeah, and it's so relatable. They gave some hilarious examples.
Like, I'm terrible with numbers. I can't even remember my own phone number.
Oh, and that one, I'm terrible with faces. I can never remember what people look like.
Right. We all have those things we're just not good at.
And using humor like that can actually help you navigate those awkward situations.
Totally. It shows that you're self-aware, but not afraid to laugh at yourself.
And it can even be a conversation starter. Like, admitting you're terrible with something can lead to some interesting discussions.
Exactly. So we've covered a lot of ground here. We've got some new vocabulary for those awkward moments when you forget someone's name. And we've talked about some fluency boosters that can help you sound more natural.
And we've only just scratched the surface. There's so much more to unpack in this podcast episode. Before we move on, I want to ask you, dear listener, have you ever been in a situation where you've forgotten someone's name?
How did you handle it? We'd love to hear your stories.
Yep.
It's interesting, right, how the podcast, I mean, it's not just about giving you the words and
It's the
phrases.
whole cultural side of things.
Right. Like asking for a business card.
It's not just about getting the name.
Exactly.
That whole like social dance,
Like in a business setting, it's seen as, polite, professional.
Right. But you wouldn't do that like at a party, would you?
No, exactly. So context is key.
It is.
Understanding those unwritten rules.
Yes.
And that's something that, textbooks don't often teach.
They really don't. And speaking of things that textbooks don't often teach, remember that around here versus around the corner.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. Because, even advanced learners.
They can trip up on these little things.
Yeah, because around the corner is very specific, right?
Literally the next street.
Right.
But around here is much more general. Imagine you're a tourist asking for directions and you say, is there a bank around the corner?
Yeah, when you really mean around here,
Yeah.
you could end up, a couple blocks away.
A long detour.
Yeah. And again, it just shows how important it is to understand how those words are actually used,
Not just knowing the definition. And they did the same thing with that phrase, terrible with. Like, that is such a versatile phrase.
Oh, it is. It's great. And they gave so many good examples.
See how many?
From, numbers and directs.
To faces.
Right.
And it's often used, like, with a bit of humor, right?
Right. It's like you're acknowledging a weakness, but not taking yourself too seriously.
Right. And that kind of brings me to this idea of humor in language learning.
Yeah.
Remember how the podcast hosts, they shared their own embarrassing stories?
Oh, yeah. It definitely, it makes you realize that everyone makes mistakes.
Right.
It takes the pressure off.
It does.
It makes you feel more comfortable.
Yeah. It's like they're saying, look, we've all been there.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to laugh at yourself. And it creates this, like, sense of camaraderie.
Yeah.
Like, we're all in this together.
Exactly.
It reminds me of something I read recently about embracing imperfection.
Oh, yeah. That's so important in language learning.
Because we get so caught up in getting everything perfect, right?
Right.
But making mistakes, that's part of the process.
It is.
And sometimes those mistakes are the most memorable learning experiences.
Absolutely.
So it's about letting go of that fear of judgment,
Totally. And just diving in.
Yes.
Even if you stumble.
And you know what that applies to? That applies to life in general, not just language learning.
So true. Being kind to yourself.
Yeah.
Knowing that, you're not going to be perfect all the time.
Yeah.
Learning from those mistakes.
Exactly. So just to recap what we've learned so far, some new vocabulary to help you navigate those awkward situations, a deeper understanding of how those phrases actually work in real conversations,
Right.
and hopefully a new appreciation for humor.
Yeah.
And don't forget, we also got those cultural insights,
Yeah. Those are so important.
Because that was another thing that this podcast did really well, was highlighting those little, like, social cues,
Yeah, those unspoken rules.
It's like they're giving you the cheat sheet for how to blend in and how to navigate these situations.
Absolutely.
But let's go back to some specific phrases that really stood out.
Okay.
Remember that discussion of how is it going?
Oh, yeah.
Such a common greeting,
Mm-hmm.
but so often overlooked.
Yeah, it is.
And what's fascinating about it is that it's more than just a greeting.
It's an invitation.
It is. It's like you're opening the door to a more personal conversation.
Yeah, you're showing genuine interest.
You are. It's not just like going through the motions. You're
Right.
saying, hey, I'm here, I'm present, and I want to know what's going on with you.
Right.
And it's such a small change, but it has a big impact.
Absolutely.
And it can make you seem more approachable, friendlier, more engaged.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you're choosing the right key to unlock a deeper connection.
Exactly. And speaking of keys that unlock deeper meaning, let's go back to slipped my mind.
Oh, that's a good one.
That phrase
It's so much more than just saying, I forgot, isn't it?
really is.
It's vivid. It's almost playful.
Mm-hmm. You can picture it,
You can, like a thought escaping your grasp.
Right, exactly.
And it adds that touch of humor to the situation, right?
Yeah. Which can be really helpful when you're feeling embarrassed about forgetting something.
Yes.
They gave some good examples, remember?
Yeah. Like forgetting to respond to an email.
Right. I'm so sorry, it just slipped my mind.
Way better than just, oops, I forgot.
Right. And then the birthday one.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think we've all been there.
We have?
Oh, no, it's your birthday. It completely slipped my mind.
It's acknowledging the mistake, but it's still lighthearted, right?
Mhm.
It's like saying, my brain's not perfect, but I care about you. I'm
Mhm.
genuinely sorry, I forgot.
It's a great example of how language can be used not just to convey information,
Right, right.
but also to like manage social situations, preserve relationships.
It's understanding the emotional undercurrents of communication
Right.
and using language to navigate them.
And it's fascinating how much meaning and nuance can be packed into a seemingly simple phrase.
Like slipped my mind.
Yeah,
It's a versatile tool.
it is.
It softens the blow of forgetting something,
Yeah.
adds a touch of humor,
Mhm.
strengthens social bonds.
It's a reminder that language is about so much more than just words and grammar.
It's about connection,
Yes.
empathy,
Hmm.
the shared human experience.
Absolutely.
Wow, it's amazing how much we've gotten out of just one little podcast episode.
I know, right? It's like they packed a whole language learning course into one conversation.
Vocabulary, culture, communication strategies, even humor.
Yeah, it's all there.
And it's all centered around this thing that we can all relate to,
Like fear of forgetting someone's name.
yeah. But what I really appreciate is that they don't just leave us hanging with that anxiety.
Right. They give us tools to deal with it.
Exactly. Remember those tips for like extracting someone's name when you've totally blanked?
Oh, yeah, like asking for a business card?
Yeah.
Or even their email address?
Sneaky, but effective.
It works.
But I think the bigger point here is that, it's okay to acknowledge those awkward moments.
Oh, absolutely.
Like trying to cover it up, it often makes it worse.
Yeah, it's like tripping and pretending nothing happened.
Everyone saw it.
Yeah, exactly. Just own it.
Yeah.
A little humor, a little self-awareness, it goes a long way.
It does. It's like you're saying, hey, I'm human.
Mm-hmm.
I make mistakes. Let's just, laugh about it and move on.
Right, exactly.
And that reminds me of, that whole thing about humor.
Oh, yeah.
Remember those terrible with examples?
Terrible with numbers, terrible with directions.
Terrible with faces.
It's like the universal language of self-deprecation.
It's true. And it works so well because it disarms people, right?
Yeah, it does.
Creates
It
connection.
makes those awkward moments a little less, well, awkward.
Yeah. And it's like saying, look, I'm not perfect.
Mm.
And that's okay.
Right.
Let's just embrace the absurdity of it all.
Exactly.
It's interesting how this deep dive has gone beyond just language.
Yeah, it has.
It's touched on psychology, social dynamics.
Even philosophy a little bit.
Yeah, this one little topic, it's opened up a whole world of insights into how we communicate,
How we connect.
how we deal with awkwardness.
Mm-hmm.
So what can you take away from all of this? Well, you've got some new phrases to help you with those memory lapses.
Right.
You've got a better understanding of how humor can help your communication.
Yeah.
And hopefully you feel a little bit more confident about navigating social situations in English.
But here's something to think about.
Okay.
The podcast focused on forgetting names,
Yeah.
but, think about all the other embarrassing situations that can happen.
Oh, there are so many.
Like spilling coffee on yourself
Oh, yeah.
while you're trying to order at a cafe.
Oh, I can feel the secondhand embarrassment already.
Or accidentally saying you too when the waiter tells you to enjoy your meal.
Oh, classic. But you're right. It makes you think, like, what other phrases, what other strategies could you have ready for those moments?
Exactly. Because language learning, it never really ends, does it?
It doesn't. It's a continuous journey.
Always something new to discover, new challenges.
Always room to grow.
And the funny thing is, those embarrassing moments, they can be the best learning experiences.
They can.
They teach us to be more adaptable, more resilient.
Yeah, to be more comfortable with ourselves.
Exactly. So, embrace those awkward encounters.
Laugh at your mistake.
Keep exploring the world of English.
Who knows? Maybe your next social faux pas will become your next great anecdote.
Until then, happy learning.
We'll catch you on the next deep dive.